Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to episode number 876 of NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com, as well as the YouTube channel and NoDQ&A videos affiliate, ringsidenews.com. Make sure you check out episode number 875 if you haven't already. Let's get down to your questions now from twitter.com/AaronRift using the hashtag PAIV. First one today comes from Daniel Lynch. What is your opinion on Shane McMahon being the 5th member of Team SmackDown Live? I think it's not bad. I feel it does add more intrigue to the match at Survivor Series. I know some fans were disappointed when word got out that Baron Corbin was going to be pulled from the match. There were fans thinking, oh, this must mean Undertaker is going to be added to the match. But instead it was Shane McMahon. So there was some disappointment from fans, but overall, I feel it will add to the match, and perhaps this is a sign WWE is going forward with Shane McMahon versus Brock Lesnar, since Lesnar will be at that show, Wrestling Goldberg. I could see Lesnar coming out and costing Shane and costing Team SmackDown the match, and that sets up WrestleMania. Something like that could very well happen. It's really interesting. I think that there's a reason for Shane being added to this match in the storyline. Something is going to go down at Survivor Series involving Shane McMahon that is going to be significant in the build-up towards WrestleMania. That's what I'm predicting at this point, but I will be doing the full predictions with Jeff Meacham and David Payne next week, so stay tuned for that. We'll talk more about the Shane situation, but I say it does add to the match. Got this one here from Burge. Do you think that someone will switch brands and turn on their current brand in the 5-on-5 match? If so, who would you turn? I think that if you had nothing else going on, then it would be a good idea to have somebody turn on their team. I mean, we've seen it before. I remember back at Bragging Rights, Big Show turned on his team. But in this case, you already have several other potential storylines. You have this potential storyline where Brock Lesnar comes out and attacks Shane McMahon. You also have the possible storyline of Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt. Will Randy Orton possibly turn on Wyatt? That's another possible storyline. You have the friction between Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens. There's a lot of different storylines that are going to be playing out during this match. And I think if you had somebody turn on their brand and jump to the other brand during this match, I actually think it would be booking overkill to do that. You have so many other storylines. There's not really a need to do that for this year's Survivor Series match. I guess it could happen with one of the tag teams or maybe even one of the women. I think it's more likely if it does happen, it will happen in one of those matches. But again, you have so many storylines going on. I do not feel it's necessary for this year. I mean, maybe next year you can consider doing it, but for now, I think I would not have somebody turn on their brand and jump ship just because you have so much else going on. This one comes from Mike. What did you think of Vince's last-minute change of who was going over in the election? That's a funny question. In a serious question that I've gotten from people, quite a few people have asked me about WWE and how they will handle the Donald Trump victory. Will they acknowledge it on Raw? Will Donald Trump someday appear on WWE television while being in office as President of the United States? I think the McMahon family is obviously very happy. They've been very close with Donald Trump over the years, and I would not rule out the possibility of Trump being mentioned on Raw. I mean, here's the thing. WWE is very politically correct, so they're going to be really careful what they say on television. WWE did not want their talents speaking out, even though Mick Foley did. He said, don't vote for Trump. But for the most part, people in WWE have kept quiet. Although after the election results were in, there were some people in WWE that were expressing frustrations. I know Renee Young commented and a few other people did. So time will tell if there's any heat by WWE towards some of these people that spoke out. But I think WWE just wants to try to avoid going into politics. I mean, we all know when you start talking politics, it can get very heated and you can get a lot of emotions out of people. So I think WWE's best course of action would just be to carry on business as usual. Maybe they can do a quick little congratulations thing by the announcers or show a graphic or something. But, the fans will boo it, I'm sure, if it gets shown on the Titantron or whatever. And maybe someday we will see Donald Trump. Maybe things will work out and he'll unite the country. He'll turn things around, and maybe WWE will have an opportunity to bring him in. I mean, he's going to be a very busy man. He's got a lot on his plate, but perhaps one day WWE will allow him, if that's something he wants to do, of course, come on to WWE television and make an appearance. Got this one here from @WalkU1. Hey, what did you think of the Glasgow crowd? Was there in person and it was electric. And he's a first-time asker. Hopefully he will ask more questions, because my answer might not be what he's looking for. I thought it was disappointing. I felt that crowd made some noise at times, like for the segment where you had Charlotte getting all that heat and the fans singing the song for Bayley. The fans were doing the yes chant for Daniel Bryan. They were into Ellsworth. But the thing about that crowd is when the actual matches were going on, they were very quiet. It felt like you could hear a pin drop in that arena. And it seemed like those guys were wrestling in an empty arena. There was no noise during the actual matches. And when people were making comebacks, the crowd was not reacting much. It was a very flat crowd at times, except for those key moments here and there when they were really loud. But yeah, I mean, I like crowds when they are consistently making noise and they're invested in the matches and they're following every single move, they're reacting to every single move, and they're enjoying the story being told, and they're reacting. When they're just sitting there not making any noise, except for the few moments where they feel they want to make noise, to me that's not really a great crowd. So I wasn't all that impressed with the Glasgow crowd. So hopefully you'll send in more questions, but that's just my take on it. I do understand that WWE did turn down the crowd at times, and they had to do some editing. It did sound better on those YouTube clips than it did on television, and it probably sounded better live than on television as well. This one comes from Boogeyman79. A 4-person play-by-play on SmackDown. Do you think that this was a good move? I am baffled as to why Tom Phillips was there. I mean, I just watched the YouTube clips. I did not watch the entire show, but best I could tell, he wasn't even saying anything. It sounded like the usual banter back and forth between Ronaldo, JBL, and Otunga. I saw the camera angles, and you could see Tom Phillips just sitting there on the side of the announce table. He barely has any room, and it didn't sound like he said much of anything from what I could hear. So I do not get it unless WWE's going to eventually phase out Otunga and put Phillips in there. I'm not sure. But yeah, 4 people is just way too much. I mean, I think it should just be a 2-person team. That's my opinion on it. But, 4 people is just absolutely ridiculous. The only time you have 4 out there is when you have, like, the guest commentator, one of the wrestlers doing commentary. But beyond that, having a 4th guy out there the entire show, I mean, what purpose does he serve? I mean, what is he there for? What does he add to the commentary? I mean, he really adds nothing. So 4 people, way too much. This one comes from Mr. Yuck. Rusev seems to be falling down the proverbial ladder. Is he in need of a face turn, repackaging, or a brand switch or time off? Very good question. There's a lot of different ways WWE can go with this. Unfortunately, I seem to think that he's going to go down the same route as Kozlov, and I've said this before, and then they ended up saving Rusev and building him back up again. But, I mean, if they turn him face, he's going to end up like Kozlov. He's going to end up as this babyface mid-carder, and it's going to be the end of his run. Now, is there anything that can be done to keep Rusev going strong as a monster heel for a while? I mean, if he does go to SmackDown, that would help him. I think that might buy him a little bit of time, but beyond that, I'm not sure what else you can really do with him at this point. I mean, he has really run his course as a heel character. They can turn him face, but I mean, maybe it'll work. Maybe a babyface turn will work for him. I mean, you have to try. You have to experiment. But my fear and my gut instinct is that he'll end up like Kozlov, and he'll be in the company a couple more years, just doing comedy matches, and that'll be it for him. I mean, that's my gut feeling on it. But Lana's very over, so maybe something will work with Rusev. You never know. This one comes from RPA Brand. Do you see Sami Zayn winning the Royal Rumble and making a triple threat with Finn Balor and Owens for the Universal title at WrestleMania? I like Sami Zayn. I'm a Sami Zayn guy. I loved him back in PWG, going back a decade. But with that being said, I think the odds of him winning the Royal Rumble are highly unlikely in all likelihood. I think that Sami will have a spot at WrestleMania, but it's probably going to be another one of those ladder matches or some type of multi-man match. I mean, I would be surprised if Sami gets a major singles match or a triple threat match at WrestleMania. I would be really surprised. I mean, I like the idea of a triple threat match. Finn Balor doesn't need to win the Royal Rumble, so you could have somebody like Sami Zayn win the Rumble, and then Finn Balor asks for his rematch at WrestleMania, and you set up a three-way that way. I mean, that would be really cool. I mean, I would love to see the match. Don't get me wrong. But realistically, I think it's a long shot that it's going to happen. This one comes from Wade versus Slade. Hey Aaron, do you think Sami Zayn should bring back El Generico to use in WWE? He needs some change, or no, since he's not used it? I don't think so. I mean, El Generico was a very indie gimmick. The whole thing with the mask and the cape. I mean, it was not major league. He definitely performed at a major league level, but the character itself was very indie, and I don't see WWE doing that on the big stage. I mean, they could try to maybe recreate Mr. America and do some sort of gimmick like that. I mean, that's the only reason I could see WWE doing it. If there was an interesting storyline where he had to put on the mask to try and hide his identity. I mean, that might be funny and entertaining if they recycle that, but beyond that, I don't see any reason why they would do that. No logical reason for them to have him come out as El Generico. I mean, he's doing just fine as Sami Zayn with his WWE character. There's no need to go back to that indie character. So, no, I don't think it's going to happen. This one comes from Paul Bessman. Was 98 Undertaker's year? Why or why not? It was definitely one of his better years. I mean, some would say 97 was Taker's year. He won the world title at WrestleMania. He had several pay-per-view main events. He had that match with Mankind in April. He had the match with Bret Hart at SummerSlam. And of course, the matches with Shawn Michaels. The one at Ground Zero and then Hell in the Cell. One of the biggest matches in wrestling history. So 97 was a great year for Undertaker. 98 was pretty big too. I mean, he had the match with Kane and the entire feud with Kane. He was in the main event picture the entire year, feuding with Austin at SummerSlam. And then some would say 2007 was Undertaker's biggest year. I mean, some would say that was when Taker was at his real peak in the ring, having some of the best matches of his career, feuding with Batista, feuding with Edge, winning the Royal Rumble, winning the world title. All these things Undertaker did in 2007 and 2008 as well. He was red hot. So, any one of those 4 years, 97, 98, 2007, 2008, those were all excellent years for the dead man. All right, this next one comes from Austin Allen. If there is a Shawn Michaels versus AJ Styles match, who would win? Shawn Michaels, I think. WWE would not have him come back just to lose. That's a very good point that you make. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that Shawn Michaels came back for the Royal Rumble in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. I mean, it would be difficult to have him come back for that and not have him win. Now, if he came back at WrestleMania, maybe you could have him lose to AJ Styles, come back and put over AJ. I think if it was in Texas at the Alamo Dome, Shawn would have to win. And maybe even WrestleMania too. if you did it somewhere else, I mean, quite frankly, they shouldn't do it anywhere else. I mean, it's really either the Alamo Dome, WrestleMania, or they don't do it. So yeah, if he does come back, I mean, one would think he would win, because the fans are going to want that moment, and you know, I think it would be a mistake to do something similar. I mean, look what happened with Sasha Banks versus Charlotte in Sasha's hometown. And this would be a much bigger deal with Shawn Michaels coming out of retirement in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. I mean, how do you have him lose that? I mean, it would be a huge mistake. So yeah, if he does come back, whether it's Rumble or WrestleMania, I would say Shawn should go over. Got this one here from David Payne is God. Well, apparently he's not God, because David hates Donald Trump and Trump won. Just saying. You mentioned Hulk Hogan coming back for special appearances. Do you see him being a manager to help elevate a new star? No. The reason it would be a bad idea is that Hogan would probably overshine the guy he's managing. I mean, Ric Flair, even though Charlotte was doing well, there were times where I felt like Rick was outshining his daughter, and I think that was part of the reason why WWE took Rick off of television after a period of time, because, you know, the spotlight needs to be on Charlotte, and when Ric Flair's out there, the spotlight just naturally gravitates towards Ric Flair. So if Hogan came back and was a manager, I mean, unfortunately, all of the focus would end up going towards Hogan, even if Hogan's not trying. And we all know how Hogan is. Hogan will not be able to help himself. He'll go out there and he'll cup his ear, and he would glance at the crowd, and you know how Hogan is. Just looking at the crowd, he can get a reaction out of people. So I think that Hogan coming back as a manager would not work. I think it's best to just stick to him being a public ambassador, a goodwill ambassador, and doing public appearances every now and then. This one comes from Wrestling Tubes. Hey Aaron, do you think Dana Brooke is the female version of Lex Luger, and do you think WWE will send her back to NXT or get rid of her? Well, Lex Luger actually won the world title, and Lex Luger actually showed up on the first Nitro and made a huge impact. So Dana Brooke's got quite a ways to go to even be the female Lex Luger. Maybe she's the female Warlord. I'm not sure who I would compare her to. I think Dana Brooke is in a tough spot right now, because if she goes back to NXT, it will be a sign that the company failed with her, and it will not look good for her. It will be really difficult for her to be taken seriously again. You know, one of the good things about the way things were before NXT, somebody could disappear and go back to developmental for a while and fine-tune their skills and not really be under a microscope as much. But with NXT being so high profile now, her going back there would make her look really bad, I think. So I don't know. I don't know what you do with her at this point, because it seems to be pretty obvious that she's not ready for the big time, and she seems to be a step behind the other women every week on television. It feels like she's out of place there, and they called her up too soon. So not really sure what you do with her at this point. Maybe you can find a way to get her to NXT without making her look bad, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to figure out what to do with her. That'll do it for this edition of NoDQ&A Video. If you enjoyed today's video, please share it on Facebook or Twitter. Tell a friend about NoDQ&A Video, and stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest regarding the Survivor Series pay-per-view. A lot going on, lots of changes to Survivor Series, and I will be back later this week with another edition of NoDQ&A Video. See you next time.